Hello everybody, how are you doing? Hopefully y'all can hear me really well. Well, I'm Brandon, and tonight we're going to read Final Fantasy's A Tale of the Past, Traces of Two Pasts, which I got it in the mail today, so I'm really excited to read it. So I'm not going to read all of it because it's almost 400 pages, but I figured I'll read, maybe 4, 5, 6 pages or so, and we'll go from there. So, if anybody's wondering, Final Fantasy VII is a video game series from the PlayStation, and it's a magnificent game with really awesome lore and backstories. And this book here is a prequel to pretty much the OG Final Fantasy VII, kind of in between Crisis Core and the OG, but in between there. And the two people you have Tifa, who's one of the Wat right here, and you got Eris, which her real name is actually Aerith, but OG people know that her name is Eris. So, we don't want to get mixed up, but feel free to call her whichever one. So, here we go. Alright, Episode 1, Traces of Tifa. So, here goes, everybody. The breeze over the grassy plains swept through Tifa Lockhart's hair, reminding her of home. When she had been living in the village, her hair had remained forever tousled by the winds blowing down from Mount Nibble. Walking just ahead was Aerith Gainsborough, who gestured wildly at the sprawling grasslands and asked, "Hey, are you used to this kind of stuff?" Tifa had only met her, the other woman, a few days earlier, but she found her easy to talk to. In fact, within hours of first meeting, they'd already been chatting and joking like old friends. Another gust swept the plains, sending waves rolling through the grass. Tifa turned to face the way they'd come, catching the wind at her back as she did so. The amount of distance the party had recovered surprised her. When Tifa returned to walking, Aerith had moved close to her side. "You mean, have I ever seen endless fields like this before?" replied Tifa. "No, I mean the walking. Hours and hours of it. First the Badlands, and now grass. I don't mind it, I guess. It's good cardio." Aerith laughed. "Everything comes down to exercise for you, doesn't it?" "If I had a choice, though," continued Tifa, "I'd take a hiking trail." Well, I lost my page. "Hiking trail in the mountains over this. At least that way the scenery changes as you go along." "Right. Ever since we left the city, it's like we've been walking in circles. It never ends. I used to dream of having a picnic in a wide open field, but if it's all this the grasslands had to offer, I think I'll pass. I say this is closer to hiking than a picnic. Picnics are about sitting down to eat and having fun. Does that mean you've been on one before? A real picnic?" "Sure I have." Tifa thought back on the days she had spent as a child in the village. "I mean, sort of," she clarified. "They were like picnics. We just used a different name." "Yeah, what did you call them?" Tifa's cheeks flushed, and her gaze fell as she answered, "Tea parties." There was an amused snort. Tifa looked up in time to see a ripple of laughter work its way through Red 13's iconic pelt. The beast, for he was a beast, at least in appearance, flicked his flame-tipped tail from side to side as he walked. Though Tifa had accepted him as their traveling companion, she had to admit she was still unnerved by the dissonance between his appearance and his human-like speech and intelligence. Eris' eyes sparkled. "Tell me more. I want to hear all about your tea parties." "Sure." But even as she answered, Tifa realized she wasn't quite sure where to begin. Break. And vapor break. Alright, and continue. Nibelheim was a tiny village at the base of Mount Nibble. It had always been a modest community, established first as an unnamed base camp for prospectors whose gill-hungry eyes fixated upon the mountain's unique flora and fauna. Even after Nibelheim had proven itself a nominally permanent fixture worthy of a name, it was still little more than a basic settlement in the wilderness, consisting of a few households offering room and board to adventurers making their way up the mountains. It wasn't until the community attracted the attention of Shinra manufacturing that it started to resemble a proper village. The company was in search of a site to conduct top-secret, cutting-edge research far removed from the prying eyes of the Republic of Junin, and Mount Nibel seemed the perfect choice. It was 1960, 1 year following the discovery of Mako energy, and Shinra was anxious to investigate all potential uses of this new resource. Construction began on the facility that would come to be known as the Shinra Manor. Next came the Nobel reactor, a massive undertaking that saw the tiny mountain village flooded with laborers from across the country. If Nibelheim ever achieved anything resembling prosperity, those were the years. By 1968, construction of the reactor was complete, and the itinerants had moved on. Only a tiny research crew remained, along with a small number of civilians contracted by Shinra to maintain its new facilities. Life at Nibelheim grew quiet once more. Over the years, the facility's remote location became more of a drawback than an asset. As the reactor aged, Shinra saw no need to update it, instead throttling operations until the reactor was all but offline, at least in a practical sense. The village, with no other industry to fall back on, saw its population dwindle. Everything depended on Shinra. The only money flowing in came from fees paid by the company for land use rights, barely supplemented by the wages earned by the ever-shrinking contingent of maintenance workers. Nibelheim's entire existence was tied to a couple of worn-down facilities that the company seemed ready to do away with at a moment's notice. The villagers agreed that something had to change. They debated endlessly over ways to secure the community's future, but failed to find a clear path forward. Ultimately, their voices and ideas were as fleeting as any of the angry guts sweeping down from Mount Nibel's foreboding peak. Break. Now, to clarify some stuff up, Mount Nibelheim, Mount Nibel is a mountainous area above Nibelheim, and what they're referring to is the Shinra Electric Power Company. They built a reactor to extract Mako energy, which is equivalent to, our power lines and our electrical sources to, maintain, like gas and fluids to, run and utilize, equipment, electronics, vehicles. That's what Mako energy is, and that's what these reactors do. Except these reactors are very bad for the world. It drains the whole entire life force, depletes it all, and over time, if they keep using up all the Mako, the life stream will run dry, and it will have to take spirit energy more from everybody. And in return, if they run out of Mako and the life stream runs empty, planet Gaia will be completely destroyed. And the reason why they're shutting it down right now is because they used up all the Mako in that area, and they had no longer have any more use for the reactor, and that's why it was left and abandoned. So we'll continue back from break. Here we go. There were only 4 other kids around my age in the village, and they were all boys, explained Tifa. We had our own little clique, I guess you'd say. We were so inseparable, the villagers started referring to us as the 4 Fiends. Those were the friends I'd eventually start having tea parties with. Wait, but if it was you plus 4 other kids, shouldn't you have been the fabulous 5 or something? One of those other 4 boys was Cloud. The rest of us used to invite him along for our adventures, but he always refused. That is, if you could get a response out of him in the first place. Most of the time he straight up ignored us. The way he acted got him into a lot of fights, until eventually the other boys were always referring to him as the weirdo, or the menace to society. Tifa glanced ahead at Cloud's Drive, who led the way on their journey across the grasslands. Cloud could have undoubtedly overheard her story, but he gave no sign of acknowledgement. I think I might have accidentally passed a page. Nope, I'm good. Okay. Yep. So it's break again. That was a small part. Thank you everyone for joining so far. I appreciate that. Y'all ready to continue? Here we go. Tifa was born in May of 1987, the first and only child of Brian and Thea Lockhart. Thea succumbed to illness when Tifa was only 8, leaving the girl to be raised by her father. When things Brian couldn't manage to do on his own, the other women of the village were happy to assist with. They taught young Tifa to cook and to sew and all manner of things a village mother would teach her daughter. Nibelheim's was an old way of life passed down over generations, all the way back to the days of the Republic. Men went out to work and women stayed behind to tend to the home. Thus, a woman's lot in life was thought to hinge largely upon the man she ended up with. Emilio, Lester, Tyler, and Tifa. They'd been the four fiends ever since they learned to walk. Each was the eldest or only child, and their parents were all quite close, too. The four spent their days running wild around the village, roughhousing and sharing adventures, in short, growing up together. But too soon their carefree days would be cut short, the dynamic among them never to fully recover. The death of Tifa's mother sent shockwaves through the community. Tifa suddenly found herself an object of pity, someone everyone else was supposed to feel bad for. Burgeoning adolescence only complicated matters. As the boys neared their teenage years, their perception of Tifa shifted yet again. She was no longer a childhood playmate. She was a girl, and one that many of the other three boys would have been happy to end up with. Their afternoon adventures were soon peppered with attempts to flirt and show off. Still, the mood when they were together remained light-hearted, and Tifa, for her part, didn't mind the silly and somewhat flattering displays. She also knew her line and was careful not to cross it. When any of the boys invited her out alone, she responded with vague silence. She didn't want to decline outright and risk hurt feelings. Instead, she pretended not to catch the subtle invitations and shrugged off the ones that were more outright. Around the same time, the boys began to speak of leaving the village. These were the first symptoms of a plague of wanderlust that seized upon all the young men in Nibelheim. Tifa's friends talked of joining Shinra's ranks to make names for themselves, or of moving to Midgard to strike it rich. The specifics of each dream varied, but all three converged on a single point: a triumphant reappearance in the village to take Tifa's hand and whisk her away to a better life. He'd keep her safe, each boy promised. He'd give her a future. In their eyes, Tifa was a badge of honor, a trophy to be won, pride of success, and escape from a life of mediocrity. And in reality, Tifa, if she was a real life woman, she'd be one hell of a woman, I'll tell you that right now. She is a very sweet and really good person. At least in the games and stuff. You'll notice if you ever played the games or watched the movie, you'd really know what I'm talking about. And now we're continuing. It was Tifa's 12th birthday. She was walking about the village in the new pair of sandals she had received from her father. They were the latest fashion in Midgard, and frankly, a poor choice of footwear for the rough, packed dirt of Nibelheim's main square. She was concentrating intently on each small, careful step when Xander, the head of the village, called out to her. "Well, if it isn't Tifa Lockhart. Say, you remember that litter of kittens we just had over at our place? I've been thinking that you might be the perfect person to take one home. And I hear that today just so happens to be your birthday." Tifa's eyes grew wide. Xander walked back toward his home and signaled for Tifa to follow. "Come on," he said. "I've already cleared it with Brian. You get first pick of the litter." She had lost count of the number of times she had begged her father for her cat. This was a dream that had come true. Inside Xander's home, Tifa peered at the kittens asleep in their little wooden box for a very long time. Finally, she lifted a small white cat from among its siblings and cradled it in her arms. Huh, good choice, said Xander. That one's name is Fluffy, but seeing as she's your cat now, you ought to pick a name that you fancy. He paused for a moment, then added, Of course, if it's all the same to you, I'd recommend you stick with Fluffy. Cat clutched to her chest. Tifa ran home as fast as she skedaddled. Feet would allow. Halfway across the square, the kittens tried to leap free. Tifa twisted to maintain her grip, and the panicked motion sent her crashing to the ground. Instead of home, Tifa's next step was Dr. Sank's tiny village clinic. The diagnosis was a sprained right ankle and its break. Do y'all want me to keep reading, or do y'all want to stop there and continue? Because this chapter's a really long chapter, so we'll have to do breaks from breaks. I guess I'll read to one more, and that'll get us through 10 pages. How about that? But if you're wondering, Xander is the town mayor. So, there we go. So, continue. One of my brand new sandals was in pieces, and I had some pretty bad scrapes too, recalled Tifa. One even ended up getting infected. Between the resulting fever and my sprained ankle, I was in bed for a week. Ouch. And just on top of it, Fluffy ran away all the same. She found her chance later that week when Dad let the door open. Oof, replied Aerith. The bad luck kept piling on. I take it that means you kept the name Fluffy, though. Dad felt awful about letting the cat escape, so while I was stuck in bed, he wrote the entire village into a coordinated search. Xander told everybody the lost cat's name was Fluffy, so that's what everyone went around calling as they looked. It just kind of stuck. I was pretty upset that I didn't get to name my own cat, but it's not like that was Fluffy's fault. Once Tifa's fever subsided, villagers began to check in on her. The first day, she was happy for the company. By the third, her tune had changed. Do they have to come home by the house every day? She moaned. If they stuff me with any more snacks, I think I'm going to burst. You should be grateful, chilled her father. Can I go outside yet? I want to help search for Fluffy. Didn't the doctor say it's important for me to get outside and gradually work on my ankle back into shape? I suppose he did say that, her father replied. Okay, you win. How about we start the day after tomorrow? I have to wait a whole day, another day? They need me on the mountains tomorrow. We're behind on trail maintenance for the route up to the reactor. I can practice walking by myself, Tifa pleaded. I promise not to leave the village. Her father sat in silence for a moment. Tifa could guess what was running through his mind. To a doting father, the words, I can do it myself, weren't much different than exclaiming, Go away, Dad. I don't need you anymore. The subtle shifts in the man's expression suggested that he was mourning how quickly his daughter was growing up, and that he was a bit cranky about it too. When he finally spoke, his tone was gruff. All right, you're a big girl, but don't you dare step foot outside the village, and don't overdo it either. The second your ankle starts feeling sore, I want you back home and in bed. And while we're at it, her father proceeded to list off half a dozen other stipulations. Tifa nodded dutifully. She knew better than to press her luck. The next morning she was giddy with anticipation as her father readied himself for work. But just as he was about to head out, there was an unexpected knock at the door. The timing seemed almost contrived. Tifa's father opened up to find Claudia Struff, their neighbor and Cloud's mother. Sorry to bother you so early, she said. I'm just here to drop this little one off. Tifa saw that woman was holding something in her arms. It squirmed relentlessly, then poked its head up to look around. And that right there is... We're going to continue. Fluffy! Exclaimed Tifa. Thank you so much, ma'am. Where did you ever find her? Apparently she was near the trailhead, just past the gate. Actually, it's Cloud you ought to thank. He brought the poor thing home with him yesterday. I told him to go see you right away, but you know how that boy is. So here I am, bright and early. Tifa thanked Claudia again. She took her kitten into her arms and slowly leant her way up the staircase to her bedroom on the second floor. Welcome home, Fluffy, she told the cat. So Cloud's the one who found you, huh? Imagine that. I wouldn't have thought he'd even heard about my new cat. So we're going to take a break there. That's 10 pages right there. So, unless everybody wants me to continue reading. If everybody wants me to continue reading, I'll go on. So, I've got to read the comments and stuff here and see. Let's see here. I don't know if I'm getting... That's funny. Oh, really? Thank you for the compliments. Alright, I'll do that. That's just trying to get a good camera angle and stuff, and holding the camera and trying to read at the same time. But thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. Alright, I'll tell you what. I will continue reading here. So, there we go. Alright, I'll go through and I'll tell you what. I will go these next 3 pages until the next break. What? I'm good. I should be live still. Yep. What? Oh, I can't rotate my phone. I can't stand it up. You stupid thing. I hate you sometimes. Ah. Alright. There we go. Alright. Alright, here we go. With Fluffy's return, walks around the village suddenly seemed more of a chore than a joy. Tifa was anxious to play outside again, but on the other hand, her ankle still throbbed with every movement. The idea of working it back to health was less appealing without a lost cat to find. Around that time, she had a surprise visit from Emilio, one of the 4 fiends. It's actually a reference to an earlier Final Fantasy game. So, pretty cool, ain't it? Come on, gotta get that ankle back in shape, he announced, holding a basket at his chest. I brought some fruit and a thermos of tea. Huh? What are you talking about? I'm taking you out for a walk. Let's head down to the pool at the base of the falls. I mean, technically speaking, that's still part of the village, right? Did my dad put you up to this? He asked me if I could come up with some way to get you more excited about your recovery. Said there were some rules, though. No leaving the village, that sort of stuff. The boy seemed nervous, almost giddy, as if he had decided there was some other deeper reason that Tifa's father had reached out to him specifically. But in the time it took Tifa to get ready, there was another knock at the door. Lester had arrived, also holding a basket. He's also one of the 4 fiends. The boy seemed nervous. Wait, no, hold on, I passed it up. Where was I at? Ah. Okay, there we go. Yep, okay. The boy seemed nervous, almost giddy, as if he decided there was some other deeper reason that Tifa's father had reached out to him specifically. But in the time it took Tifa to get ready, there was another knock at the door. Lester had arrived, also holding a basket. Tifa couldn't help but notice a trace of disappointment in Emilio's eyes. Actually, I reread a lot. I'm sorry about that. Here we go. Whoops. Come here, you stupid phone. There we are. All right. Though the waterfall in question was vital to the village's survival, it had never been named. It was simply the falls. Geologically speaking, it wasn't anything remarkable, just one outlet of many of the natural spring water housed deep in the rock of Mount Nobble. With the two boys at her sides, Tifa made her way down to the plunge pool, gingerly testing her weight on the injured foot. They've arrived and were searching for a dry place to sit when Tyler appeared. Apparently, Tifa's father had had a word with all the three of her would-be suitors, which Tyler is the third and final of the four fiends. I brought sandwiches for lunch, Tyler yelled as soon as he was in earshot. Home-cured ham! Emilio and Lester cheered. Everyone knew that the best cured meats in the village came from Tyler's home. The family recipe had been passed down for generations. Even Tifa found herself smiling about the welcome surprise. The old crew now assembled. Conversation naturally turned to Midgar. To the boys, it was a place of hopes and dreams. Upon the plates, Midgar had real schools for the city's children to attend, while kids in the slums learned to read and write from parents in the community who volunteered for the task. Thus, the four friends concluded their own level of education was probably about the same as kids living in Midgar's slums, which slums are the whole entire 8 sectors underneath the above plates on the main city of the whole entire city of Midgar. So the slums are like the low-grade places, while the top of the plate is for the wealthier people. For kids from the slums, enlistment was supposedly the quickest way to rise through Shinra's ranks. The three boys wondered aloud how risky that path might be. How dangerous would it be to serve in the military? What was the what was the fatality rate, especially given the ongoing war? And this is the war with Wutai, between Midgar, Junin, and Wutai. The other option was money. If you could figure out how to get it topside, money talked. You could buy your way out of any trouble. Even as children, the four suspected that their conversations were a jumble of truths, half-truths, and wild misconceptions. Still, the boys earnestly chattered on, and Tifa, for her part, found the strings of speculation. Sorry about that, my phone was moving. Let me start over. Still, the boys earnestly chattered on, and Tifa, for her part, found the strings of speculation relatively engaging. It was rather fun to let her imagination run wild, indulging in feelings of wonder and surprise about what might await in the unknown, far-off world of Midgar City. And there we have it. There's our break. And I'm going to stop there. So, thank you everybody for tuning in and stuff. And I appreciate it. Unless y'all still want me to keep going. I can keep going for another page and a half if y'all want me to. So, it's entirely up to you all. Let's see here. If I'm going to get some more people watching. Well, yeah. Yeah, I got plenty of people watching. Well, a few logins. So, yeah, you know what? Yep. I'm going to continue going. Yep. So, here we go. Well, I can keep this stupid phone here from falling over. Can't wait till I get my new one. Fix this daggone stupid thing. There we go. Alright. I'll continue on. But, break time though. Hit my vape real quick. Alright, y'all ready? Here goes. Tifa leaned back and listened to the boys carry on. After I move to Midgar, I wonder if I'll ever feel like coming back. Ha! You'll have to if you can't get used to city life. No way I don't want to be the one everyone knows came running home, tail between his legs. I go live in some other town. Well, one of us better come back. Otherwise, Tifa will be pretty lonely. The boys laughed and Tifa replied, I'm sure life outside Novelheim will be so exciting. You'll forget all about me. She regretted the words the moment they left her mouth. She knew it sounded like a plea for attention, and just as she feared, Emilio and the others immediately steered the conversation elsewhere in an obvious attempt to cheer her up. When lunch was over and they had left the pool, the boys talked about how nice it had been to eat outside. That was a fun picnic. We ought to plan another one soon. How does that count as a picnic? We barely stepped foot outside the village. No, see, a picnic is supposed to be somewhere close to home. You're thinking of a hike. Well, what I'd like to try, began Tifa, is a tea party. Doesn't it just sound so elegant? She had seen photos once of wealthy families during the days of the Republic. They were pictures her mother had shared when Tifa was still small enough to sit upon her knees. The people and the shots had found a nice spot in the grasslands where they spread out their blankets and unpacked their baskets to enjoy snacks and a cup of tea in the open air. Reflecting on the photos now, Tifa realized they must have been very old, perhaps taken by her great or even great-great-grandparents. Tea party? What the crap is a tea party? Beats me, but if Tifa thinks it'd be fun, count me in. Me too. Thus began the Fiend's new but short-lived tradition. And that is it, everybody. I want to pause there and stop for the night. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining in and stuff and everything. I really appreciate it. So I gotta get ready. I'm getting ready to go to bed and stuff because I'm tired and wore out. But I thank everybody, and I want y'all to take care and stuff. And thank you for joining and listening in. I appreciate every single one of y'all. And y'all take care, and you all have a very good night, okay? All right, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. All right, bye.